And how does the mythic guru then evolve into postmodern and post-postmodern culture? What is needed so that the good still can be preserved? And
so when we're speaking about the mythic guru, I suppose we're giving the benefit of the doubt that such an individual actually has experienced a very deep awakening and is stabilized in that awakening.
yeah,
Well, that means that that individual has to embrace the reality of cultural evolution and endeavor to go on that journey from a mythic interpretation and contextualization of enlightenment to a modern and to a postmodern one and beyond. And it's important to understand that this territory has yet to be defined. There is no cleared or shared agreements about what enlightenment looks like outside of a mythic context. There's a lot of different speculation, and a lot of people have different opinions about it, but there's no shared agreements. So we have to realize that this is territory that is yet to be defined. But I think that the first thing we have to do is, as we go on this journey, is to realize that there's a difference between the perfection inherent in enlightened awareness. In other words, it's possible to know that which is perfect in a non-relative or absolute context. It's possible to know that which is perfect. It's possible to know perfection. But it's not possible to be that perfection as a manifest sentient being. So a big part of this shift has to do with being clear about the difference between the perfection of a higher state of consciousness and the inherent imperfection of being human. And learn how to hold that paradox in oneself, and know how to hold that paradox in relationship to the way we see other people, especially realized people. Because unfortunately, if we have become cynical about enlightenment because we feel that too many apparently enlightened people have behaved in less than perfect ways, a lot of people have decided to go out, throw out the baby with the bathwater, and decide that enlightenment doesn't mean anything or even doesn't really exist, and that's not true. So the most important thing we need to do is learn how to hold the paradox between the perfection that's possible to know in the state of enlightened awareness and the reality of the fact that no human being is capable of manifesting perfection in and through their humanity. But if they're truly awake, if they're profoundly awake, they can transmit that perfection. That perfection can come through them as a state experience. But that doesn't make them as human beings perfect. So when you experience a state of perfection coming through an imperfect human being, it can tend to create the sense that such a human being must be inherently perfect. But a big part of but if we can all grow to understand that no human beings are ever perfect, or they're inherently imperfect, we'll learn to hold the paradox and not to mistake the individual with the state of consciousness that they're transmitting. And I think it's very important as this process evolves that we gain an appreciation for the challenge of higher human development. In other words, not that many people generally try to evolve in a serious way for long periods of time. I mean, often people will devote themselves to some kind of developmental process for a certain period of time, usually give up on it or lose touch with it or lose context. But the evolution of consciousness and evolution of our humanity, especially as we endeavor to consciously evolve, is a heroic effort. It's a heroic task. It requires an enormous amount of courage and dedication and commitment over lifetimes. So I think we have to be. I've learned to be less ready to judge other people in terms of what one could perceive of their imperfections, because if one, to the degree that one is struggling oneself to become a better person, to become a more conscious person, we actually understand what a challenge it really is, how hard it really is, not only to have experiences of higher consciousness, but to consistently develop, to consistently be busy with the process of our own higher development. And the degree to which we're actually busy with that, it awakens a deep humility about the enormity of the task at hand. And I think that kind of understanding, or kind of understanding, or kind of appreciation to what a challenge it is, not only to awaken, but not only to awaken, to stay awake, but also to make the effort to continue to grow. And what that actually evolves, it awakens a sense of genuine humility in relationship to the entire process. So, yeah, and we have to also, so the seeker, the student, has to outgrow the need to want to see the realizer, or the realized one, as the perfect parent. We have to outgrow that need to see anybody as a perfect parent. There's a lot of people involved in the spiritual process seem to have a need to deify a realizer in order to feel the presence of that perfect parent in their life. So that ultimately has to be outgrown and given up, which requires a lot of courage. And the realizer, depending, of course, on how realized they actually are, has to transcend the need, if such a need exists, to be seen as being perfect. Because a lot of powerfully realized people have shadows, and one of those shadows has to do with the need to want to be seen as being some kind of flawless expression of evolved humanity.
Yeah, but let me ask you a provocative question. I don't think that in the integral scene, in the postmodern scene, what you just described is the biggest challenge. Nobody sees anybody else as the perfect human being, and that's part of the problem, because almost nobody accepts authority. So I see the bigger problem in the sense that hierarchy is not accepted, and not that people see each other as perfect or not. So when you talk to integral people, how do we get out of this sentiment that I don't need a teacher anymore because I'm on my own path and I have to listen to myself, and that's it?
I don't know how we get out. I don't know how we get out of that. I mean, I don't know how we get out of it. Because the point is that this flat pluralism is like a swamp, and I think at a certain, I don't know how we get out of it. I think it's going to be dependent upon individuals who wake up and recognize that they're in a pluralistic swamp in which verticality has been decimated, and that those very individuals are going to have to make the heroic effort to pull themselves out of that pluralistic flat swamp and start to pave the way for something for verticality, and to reignite a context where actual developmental differences are going to be honored and recognized and acknowledged positively. But we're very far away from that. I don't know how long it's going to take. It looks very difficult right now because it lets the ego off the hook. It lets the ego feel this is no problem. So what is it? So the question you're asking me is we're all so full of ourselves. We're all so arrogant. We're all so deluded about how much we think we know and how great we think we are and how important we think we are. Then what is it going to take to wake us up? I don't know. Usually what wakes people up is terrible calamities. I mean, yeah, I don't know what else it can do, but I find a lot of this very discouraging. It's very discouraging and it's very disheartening. And I see, yeah, the baby getting thrown out with the bathwater too much of the time. And this has happened because there's been the shocking discovery that too many realizers are less than perfect, to say the least. And I think a lot of people can't hold this paradox, and a lot of the realizers don't want to be seen as being less than perfect. And so this creates a very complex and problematic situation. But I think it can be solved if there's a truly evolutionarily awakened realizer who no longer needs to play the game of wanting to be seen as perfect. And if he's working with students that are embracing a rare level of maturity and autonomy, that want to work in a serious way in which everybody can develop in a truly integrally informed spiritual context, then I think something new could really emerge. And that's what I'm personally very, very interested in giving rise to. I'm very interested in that.